All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe Briano, the Fullerton Informer. I'm here live with Grindall61 YouTuber Gary Galeno, coming to you live from the studios of the Fullerton Informer in Fullerton, California. And this flag is upside down for a reason, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let's let the notifications go out before we get into the meat and potatoes. In just a moment. I want to direct you all to Gary's YouTube channel. It's Grindall61, all one word. Gary, go ahead and spell your YouTube channel for the audience, please.
It's Grindall61, all one word.
All right, that's Grindall61 on YouTube. What's your contact information? People want to get a hold of you.
That's it.
That's it. Okay, message them there. This is Joe Briano, P.O. Box 4121, Fullerton, California, 92834. On the web at thefullertoninformer.com, WiFiDangers.com, CellTowerDangers.com, VaxDangers.com, and of course, Joe Imbriano777 at gmail.com. Gary is here because Gary is an expert in political science. And you know, when he and I get together, it's
Go ahead.
Got an unstable connection here. They're buffering. Folks, just hang on. Are we buffering, guys? Are we doing okay? Okay, it looks like we're back up. Can you guys hear me okay? All right, ladies and gentlemen, this flag is upside down for a reason. It's not that we're worshiping the flag. We're not saying the Pledge of Allegiance right now. This is a symbol of a nation in distress. And if you haven't realized that this nation is in distress right now, you need your heads examined. I wanted to have Gary on because he and I have a very uncanny ability to cut through the nonsense and get right down to the point and explain what is going on so all of you understand what is being done to you and propose solutions so they can't get away with this. Go ahead and take it away, Gary.
All right. So I've seen all your videos that you've been making about our current situation, and I find it interesting. I have a very different take on the matter, and so that's what I came here to do, was just to give another perspective on how things are going. You know, I don't really know what's going to happen or what it's going to look like in a month, but I'm going to show some evidence, and just going off of my own personal things that I've researched over the years, and just how I've kind of put two and two together. So the way I see this whole coronavirus situation is this is the new 9/11. And 9/11 happened in 2001, and the 9/11 program went from 2001 to 2020. And 9/11 was the war on terrorism. It was the faceless, stateless enemy where you don't know who it is, you don't know where they're at. They could be anywhere at any time. Because of 9/11, they invented Department of Homeland Security and TSA. So because of 9/11, you had to go through TSA. Because of 9/11, we got the Patriot Act. Because of 9/11, we had the whole NSA surveillance, metadata, collecting emails, phone calls, text messages, all of those things. I'm of the opinion that from here on out, as well as after the dust settles, you're never going to hear the phrase war on terrorism ever again. You know, maybe you'll hear it you know, in some old footage, but I'm saying, like, from the current president to future presidents, to the politicians right now, you're not going to hear that anymore. No more war on terrorism. You're not going to hear, what should I say? I'm trying to gather my thoughts for a second.
So right now you're telling me that the war on terror is out, and the new enemy is the same as the old enemy. It's an enemy that we can never find. It could be anywhere at once. And it's invisible, but yet all powerful, and always changing and mutating in terms of its effectiveness and its danger to us. Boy, that sounds a lot like this hoax that we're being fed with this supposed pathogen that's supposed to get us all, right?
Right. So you're not going to hear about war on terrorism anymore. You're not going to hear about actual terrorists anymore. That's what I was trying to remember what to say. You're not going to hear about actual terrorists anymore, where every day he does his the coronavirus briefing or whatever they call it, and he keeps repeating it over and over again. He keeps saying that this is the invisible enemy, just the way terrorism was the invisible enemy. So it's the exact same thing all over again. It's this enemy that you don't know who has it. They might not be symptomatic. It could be anyone at any time. It's the same old BS. So now I expect through TSA they're going to do the same screening. I'm not saying they're going to change the screening at all to something different. You'll have the same screening, but now you're being screened because of coronavirus. It's come out that the government, I don't even know if it was passing a law. I think they just were demanding it. They want the cell phone companies to give the government the ability to track our location via GPS through our smartphones, because they want to make sure that we're practicing social distancing, which we are not right now. So it's just the same exact thing. Because of terrorism, they had to spy on our communications. Because of terrorism, we had to go through TSA at the airports. Now, because of coronavirus, we have to go through TSA at the airports. Because of coronavirus, we have to have our phones and our GPS locations spied on. And, because 9/11 went for 20 years, this might go for 20 years. And, I see this going a couple of different ways. Either in a month or two, they're going to admit the virus is over, which I don't think is going to happen. But they might admit the virus is over. And if or when that day happens, I don't ever envision us going back to where we were 3 weeks ago. Whatever that world was that we had a few weeks ago, you're never going to live in that world ever again. Very similar to 9/11, where on September the 10th, the world was a certain way, and then on September the 12th, we were living this whole new different world. And anyone who's old enough to have lived through 9/11 knows exactly what I'm talking about. You felt different on September the 12th. Everything felt different.
The paradigm changed overnight.
Yeah, the paradigm changed overnight.
Hey, Gary, what was the catalyst for this 9/11?
And I did want to talk about that because I just wanted to find the date, and you're going to find the date very interesting. So to me, the thing that changed the world, and to me, it was the actual 9/11 day. You know what the day was? 3/11. And I remember you made videos about that, about November 3rd, and then you said if November 3rd doesn't come through, then 3/11, which was the inverse of November 3rd. On 3/11, that was the day the NBA, the National Basketball Association, announced that they are suspending their entire season. Now, I use the word suspend because it's, as of right now, it's not a cancellation. But they suspended the season 3/4 of the way through. So the season was almost over, and they suspended the season. And prior to that, all the large entities, WrestleMania was coming up. We had XFL football. Major League Baseball was in spring training. Concerts, all those different types of public type gatherings. It was kind of up in the air if those gatherings would all continue going forward or not. And it appeared like they would. It didn't look like the public was really buying this idea of just shutting everything down. And anyway, so the NBA, they made that announcement. They announced that they were going to basically shut down their season. And that's when everyone else went, oh, well, I guess we should do that too then. And that was the first domino that fell of all the cancellations, all the lockdowns. And I was at dinner when I found out about the NBA, and I told our table, I said, this is the last night that we're going to see where the grocery stores are normal. And it was the very next day on the 12th when the whole toilet paper thing started. And all the people were at the grocery stores clearing the aisles. So if this ends up resulting in the absolute end of the country, in my opinion, when the history books write about it, they're going to say the United States of America was from July 4th, 1776 to March 11th, 2020. Another thing, another aspect of all of this, and the coronavirus is obviously important. The response is important. All the tyranny that we are seeing is obviously important. And the last time I was here, the video was about how the coronavirus and the impeachment was a distraction for the passage of USMCA. And I don't want to get into any of that right now. You could just go watch that video. It was only a few weeks ago. But this is the exact same thing. The coronavirus is the mask of the economic meltdown that is occurring right now. So what we are seeing is we are seeing the what's the word? Not organized. We are seeing the orderly takedown of the U.S. economy, meaning that it didn't just blow up one day and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do about it? They know exactly what they're doing. And so to me, the U.S. economy was going to fail anyway. And they're using this coronavirus as the excuse to make you believe that this is why the economy is failing. And so what should be happening right now is people should be upset with the government that the stores, the grocery shelves are empty. They should be upset that we're about to go into this Great Depression, but instead they're upset with coronavirus and they're begging the government to take action. So the exact opposite of what should be happening. Everyone should be raising their fists at the government, saying, how dare you? We don't trust you. You've lost credibility. But what's happened instead? The government is gaining more power. They're gaining more rights against us. We're losing our rights. And I don't know why there's just so much to say here. But the point being is, we're upset at the wrong thing. Everyone's afraid of coronavirus, and that's not what you should be afraid of. If you're 85 years old, well, maybe you should be afraid of that. But if you're not 85 years old, then you should be afraid of what the government's going to do about coronavirus. You should be afraid of what's about to happen to our economy. And so that's actually what I came here to talk about, was the economy. And let's see, which one should I start off with? I just want to go into this one because I think it's really damning. So I brought an example, an actual copy, and I brought this because I don't think most people really even know what this is or what these look like. So when you hold this, just do me a favor, just hold it like this, because if you put your finger on the actual surface, it'll leave a fingerprint and it won't come off. So you can just hold that for the camera. So what Joe's holding up is that is a 1 ounce, 1 troy ounce American silver eagle coin. It's a government issued coin, and it's considered the standard bearer of silver coins in the United States. So there's all different types of silver coins you could buy. If you live in the United States, the American silver eagle is probably the one that you would want to get. Also because they have the highest premium, meaning that if you try to sell it, you'll get more for it than really any other coin that you would buy in the United States. But also means you'd pay more as well if you go to a coin store and you pay for these things. Now, right before I left, all the futures markets opened up as I was leaving. So at the time that I was leaving, S&P 500 was down another 4%. That could change by tomorrow. Obviously, it could be in the green for all we know if something gets announced or something happens. But as of right now, the stock markets have another big down day based on the futures. Gold futures open, oil futures open. All the future contracts opened up at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Sunday, which is right now. And when I checked the silver spot price was $12.39. Now, typically, when you walk into a coin store, you're going to pay they're going to mark it up anywhere from 10 to 20%. So when the price of silver was like $16, you might pay anywhere from $18 to $20 per coin. So right now, the spot price, which is the price you pay in the stores in real life, there's also the paper contract price, which is where the spot price is derived from, but we're not talking about the paper contracts. The spot price, which is like the real world price, is $12.39, and you would typically pay 10 to 20% markup off of that price, which is called the premium. If you go on eBay, you'll see the exact same thing. It's around a 10 to 20% markup of the spot price. What I have here in front of me, these are sales from March the 21st, which was just yesterday, and they're kind of all over the place. There's some that are a little bit lower, some that are a little bit higher, and it also depends on the year of the coin as well, because some years they produce more coins or less coins than other years. So if you go look this up yourself, that's probably why you're seeing some discrepancy. But anyway, if you want to hold this up, at the present time, on eBay, silver is selling for double spot price, which I've never seen before. I've never seen really over 20%. So you just take a roll of 20 coins. That's 400, or that would be $400. 20 times 20 at $20 per coin, based off of this, right? So the prices he just showed, I don't know if you could see them or not. One roll of 20 went for $460. That's $23 per ounce. Another set of 20 went for $453. That's $22.69 per ounce. Somebody bought a lot of 100, so 5 rolls of 20 for $2,386. That's $23.86 per ounce. Someone else paid $439, and that's $21.95 for a roll of 20. So the spot price is $12, yet people in the real world are paying
double.
They're paying double. Here's another thing that I wanted to show.
That's a problem, folks. That's what you call inflation. When the commodity prices start surging, that's a very
hold this one up.
dangerous,
So someone posted this on Facebook yesterday, and I'm sorry for the images, but those are rolls of toilet paper. It's a 4-pack. A 4-pack of toilet paper is now $6 in the stores, and I've
$1.50 for this.
I've noticed that myself, because I've actually been going to the stores because I want to live off of real food for as long as I can before I got to tear into storable food. So I have actually been in the stores every day, and I've been noticing, well, for one, you're not seeing sales anymore, and the prices are slowly creeping up. So I paid $5.99 for a case of water, which I've never done before. I've always paid around $2.99, $3.99, whatever. $5.99.
$6 for 24.
$6 for a 24-pack of water. Just the way this was $6 for a little thing of toilet paper. Now it's a little 4-pack that I'm referring to, and 10 years ago, before I ever started buying things in bulk, I would actually buy those 4 packs of toilet paper, and they'd be $1. That's how much they would cost. It'd be $1 for the 4-pack, so 25 cents a roll. So we're already seeing the very beginnings of what may end up becoming hyperinflation in the real world. Now, we've already been witnessing hyperinflation in the United States economy for a few years now. I'm of the opinion that the central bankers, they're a lot better at this now than they were back in 1913 was the date of the Fed, right? The creation of the
Yes.
Fed. Yeah. So I'm of the opinion they're a lot better at this now than they were in 1913. So the Federal Reserve was created, and prior to the Fed being created, there was never a recession in the United States, ever. There was no such thing. The whole idea of recessions and boom times is a product of the Federal Reserve. And 16 years after the creation of the Federal Reserve, 1929, we had the Great Depression. So it only took them 16 years to completely destroy the United States economy. I know many of us are aware of the infamous pictures of Weimar Germany in the 1920s, where they had the wheelbarrows full of cash. I'm sure many of you are familiar with, I think it was in the either mid-90s or mid-2000s, the Zimbabwe hyperinflation, where they had the $500 trillion bills. The only reason why we haven't seen that in the United States yet, even though that is going on, is because I'm of the opinion that the Federal Reserve is just better at doing what they do now than they were 100 years ago. So hyperinflation, up until recently, was contained in the stock market. What you were witnessing in the stock market was hyperinflation. That's why the stocks were going up so much. What you have witnessed in the price of college tuition is hyperinflation. What you have witnessed in the rental markets, with rental property, or apartments in cities going for $2,000 to $3,000 a month, that is hyperinflation. What you've seen in the price of food, very slowly, mind you, it's not hyperinflation in that it goes up 10 times in a week, but we've seen hyperinflation in the price of food. We've seen major inflation in the prices of everything, and I was saying, not really in my YouTube videos, because I haven't really made a lot of videos in the last year, but just with people that I know, I have been saying that at the present time, which was a couple months ago, hyperinflation was contained in the stock market. And I said, when the day comes that the stock market blows up, all that money is going to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere. It's not just going to be lost. Yeah, you may have lost money in the markets. You may have lost money in your 401k, but that money didn't just evaporate into thin air. It gets transferred into other people's accounts. People who are betting against you are the ones who now have your money. So what we are now seeing, not to change the subject, but just kind of a pivot, the way this all started back in, I think it was September, there was a night where there's something called the repo markets. And I learned about this when this all happened. So I didn't know about this previously. But every night there's this overnight lending market where the banks lend money to each other. And there was a night where the banks, for whatever reason, they just stopped lending money to each other. And the way I understood it was that the banks don't trust each other, you know, because they all know the situation that they're in. So the result of no one wanting to lend, the federal funds rate, which was recently lowered to 0, at that time, I believe the federal funds rate was 2.25 to 2.75. It's two numbers, so it's always two numbers, and it's like a range. The federal funds rate on September was 2.25 to 2.75, and within minutes it shot up to 9. And I don't know if that's unprecedented, but in my time following economics and markets, I had never seen that before, where an interest rate would go from 2.25 up to 9. So the Federal Reserve, to alleviate that and to keep it from going, to put it back to where it was, they injected around $80 billion into these markets. And when they did so, they said that the intent was to only do it for a few days. And that was back in September. And this goes with everything. When they tell you that we're going to have a coronavirus lockdown or stay at home for 30 or 60 days, don't think that it's just going to end after 30 or 60 days. They could very easily go, oh, 2 more weeks, 1 more month, 2 more months, another year, whatever, right? That's what the Fed did. After a few days of the repo market injections, they then came out and said, we're going to do it for the rest of for the next month. So it's a different number each day, but for that month, it was between 50 and $80 billion a day.
Crazy number.
That was being injected into these markets. The result of this, and you can just go look at the stock market charts yourself. From September to February, the stock market went parabolic. The S&P 500 went parabolic. And it was a direct result of these liquidity injections, because the stock market, think of it like a drug addict. The stock market's drugs is liquidity. And so that's why the stock market went so crazy for the last few months. And that is what's called a melt-up. A melt-up is the opposite of a meltdown. And a melt-up, or a melt-up, always happens before a meltdown. And that's why they say the bubble is always at its biggest before it pops. So after the month of them doing between 50 and $80 billion a day, now you're talking into the trillions of dollars already, trillions. The Fed then said, well, we're going to go through January, which, you know, at this point now we're into like October, mid-October, November. They're going to say we're going to go into January. Then after January, they said we're going to go into April. So they kept pushing back the date of when this would stop. But here's the thing. It's a drug addict, the stock market. It can never stop. Once they started doing the injections, it could never go away. Because the minute they announce that we're not doing this anymore, the stock market, I mean, you haven't seen anything yet. So here's what happened. Hold this up. So in one day, a couple of weeks ago, the Fed injected $1.5 trillion into these markets with a T. So they started off at 80 billion just a few months earlier, and after only a few months, they got all the way up to $1.5 trillion. Now, there's something really scary about what happened this day. Some would say that it didn't work. I say that it did work. Now, the reason why people say that it didn't work is this was the day that the the Dow Jones dropped by by 3,000 points. So they did this, and the market dropped 3,000 points. And it was also around it's the same time that they lowered the rates down to zero. That was the same day also. So they did this all on the same day. The interest rates to zero and the $1.5 trillion liquidity injection. The market goes down 3,000 points. I think it worked because I think if they didn't do this, the market would have went down 8,000 points or 10,000 points. So they actually kind of put a little bit of a floor, at least for that day. So then here's another thing. This is very recent. Yeah, you can put this one up. The federal government wants to have a $4 trillion bailout bill, which they say will be used for small business, I guess really basically business in the United States. And they say it's going to be loans. So they've created this situation where there's now going to be a $4 trillion loan out into the economy. And we know what they say about debt and loans. The debtor is the slave to the lender. And so they're enslaving us right now because of this coronavirus. Now, this has to pass through Congress. So maybe it doesn't pass. But here's the point that I want to make about this. And this is really what's alarming. So now the 1.5 trillion that the Fed announced that one day, that was not just one time. They have said out loud that they're going to be doing $1 trillion injections every day indefinitely. Indefinitely, $1 trillion a day. So there's just that what's going on.
Let's put it in perspective. What were the amounts of the TARP bailouts after 9/11?
Okay, so the TARP bailout after the 2008 crash was $700 billion, and
in its entirety.
In its entirety. And back then, that was a giant number, and everyone had their arms up in air because that was when they declared that the banks were too big to fail, and they bailed out the banks. They bought up the auto industry, and now the reason, and I have another chart to show in a minute, but now what's happened, and this is why I know this is real, is the too big to fails are the biggest they've ever been. They haven't gotten smaller. They haven't corrected their issues. They're the biggest they've ever been. And the dollar amounts are exponentially larger than what we were talking about in 2008. So you had $700 billion TARP bailout that was passed through. That was a congressional act, the $700 billion. The Fed is digitizing $1 trillion
a day.
Daily. Not an act of Congress. They're just doing it daily. And so that's why I'm saying all of this money, eventually, it has to go somewhere. And that's why you're seeing silver sell for double the spot price, which I have never seen before. It's so like, for example, if you ask me, well, what's gold doing right now? Gold is doing what it always does. It's around that 10 to 20% sweet spot. It's always kind of in that area. For whatever reason, silver has decoupled from everything, and it's just doing its own thing now. So for those of you who follow these markets, the silver spot market the real world price of silver has decoupled from the spot markets. Now, what I wanted to say was we had the article I showed. It was 1.5 trillion right there, and then we have 4 trillion in loans, right? That's $5.5 trillion. The total U.S. budget for 2019 was $4.407 trillion. So the Federal Reserve in a 5-day work period is exceeding the total U.S. budget in just 1 week. And if you want to know what, like, we're talking about these injections and liquidity, they're bailing out the banks as we speak. These are bank bailouts. Now, obviously, they're not calling it that, hearing anything about it, because how many weeks now? Well, I guess you don't watch TV, but it's been weeks now. The only thing on television is coronavirus. That's the only thing that you're hearing talked about. When there's a mass shooting, you might hear about it for 5 straight days. When 9/11 happened, for months, all we heard about on television was 9/11. That's why this is another 9/11, because it's been weeks now. and they're still talking about it.
Well, after 9/11, they kept showing those fake planes, those CGI planes hitting those buildings, and they kept showing the buildings come down from the Tesla mechanical resonance machine that destroyed them. But yeah, it was trauma-based mind control back then. All we saw were, you know, these fake CGI planes hitting the buildings coming down over and over and over again. And now apparently that's what's going on with this coronavirus hoax, is they're repeating the trauma-based mind control with the pictures of the masks, the syringes, the ambulance, and the, you know, the guy with the ventilator on that is actually having a conversation because he just got told to put it back on because his break was up.
All right, so here's the why. I have two more things, but this is the second to the last one. To me, this is the most important one, and I don't know how it's going to come out just holding it up, because for whatever reason, the person that made this, they made the most important line in yellow, and
You can't see it.
and you can't. It's hard to see, and plus my printer didn't print it out that well. So I'll tell you what this is, and then I'll show you, and hopefully you guys can just understand what I'm saying. So in the .com crash in 2000, it took the stock market over 700 days to go from its top to its bottom. 700 days, and
it's 2 years if you can't count.
a little over 2 years, and the net decline in the S&P 500 was 48.92%. Now, the point that I'm making here is this is how you know the U.S. economy is dying, and basically it's dead. Like, it's going to be dead soon. Like, there's no resurrecting this. In 2008, the Great Recession, it took around 540 days from top to bottom. So the crash was accelerated between 2000 to 2008, and the total percent drop was 56.78%. So the crash was bigger and it happened faster. In this latest one, which is going to be called the Greatest Depression, and it's not done yet, obviously, as of right now, the crash is 28.33%, and it's taken about 4 weeks. So it took 700 days in 2000
to get 48%.
To get 48%. It took 550 days to get 56%, and it's only taken about 20 days to get 28%. Now, this is what I wanted to show you. You can see the lines, and I'll just see if I can hold this up. So the lines that go to the far right, or the chart that goes to the far right, that's the .com bubble. That's this one. Where's my face? That's this one right here. So from left to right, all the way across, that was the .com bubble. That took almost over 2 years. This one, this is the Great Recession. And then let's see if we can actually show this or not. You can see this line. It's right here, the 28%. There's a line right here that goes straight down. And I wish it could be focused.
If you don't move it, it'll hone in on it. It'll stabilize. I think they could see the 28 per point.
Well, I see that, but I want it just to be more clear. Well, anyway, you can see the line right here. This is the stock market drop since the last few weeks. So it's a literal drop to the floor. Like, there's no ups and downs. There's no, correcting for a few weeks. There was one day where the market did go up like 1,800 points, but then it went down like 2,000 the very next day. So the stock market, this is what the U.S. economy dying looks like. And I want to make that drug addict reference again because it makes perfect sense for this. So the stock market is addicted to liquidity. The first time it overdosed in 2000, well, it overdosed prior to that as well, in 87, 1929, and all that. But when it overdosed in 2000, think of it like this. It OD'd, and then it went to the hospital, and it was out of the hospital in a few hours. Then when it OD'd a few years later, it had to spend the night in the hospital. This time when it OD'd, it's in a coma, and it's dying, like it's going to die. And what's the last thing that I have here? Okay, well, so anyway, so just to kind of round all of this up, the coronavirus, it's masking the economic meltdown. The economic meltdown was going to happen no matter what. And by using coronavirus, they're doing an orderly takedown of the economy. They're deciding what's being shut down. They're deciding where the money goes. That, you know, just to kind of put it in perspective, if you're disagreeing with me and you think that I'm full of it, that the coronavirus is like this real thing, that it's this big problem that we have to like shut everything down for, think about it like this. The stock market was doing what it was doing for the last 3 years, just basically going straight up. And we were told how the economy was the best it ever was, how there was more wealth than there's ever been. We were hearing all this stuff from Trump. Do you really believe that the world was so fragile that a bat sitting in a cage in Wuhan, China, blew up the entire world in about a month? Because that's what we are being told right now, that the world was so economically fragile that that's all it took to just destroy the entire world. And the reality is we were in the everything bubble. Everything is in a bubble right now, and the bubble has finally popped. The stock market bubble, rental bubble, student loan bubble, consumer credit bubble, and most importantly, the bond market bubble. The real reason why the stock market is crashing is not because of coronavirus. It's because the bond market is crashing. And that's why we have zero interest rates now. And the Fed has crashed it themselves. And the reason why the Fed dropped the interest rates is because when the Fed lowers interest rates, it's an emergency measure that is used to prop up the stock market. So they've lowered down to zero, which means that the only step next is negative. But what did I say earlier?
That's very, very, very dangerous. Negative interest rates in the United States.
And they're coming. They're coming.
And gentlemen. And Trump talked about negative interest rates.
Oh, he's been talking about it for a while. And here's the thing. I said it earlier about the repo injections, the $1 trillion a day. If there's a day where the Fed says the program's over, the country is over, or the economy, however you want to call it, in the same manner that they can never raise interest rates ever again. And the fact that they've gone to zero, because if they do raise them, in December of 2018, they raised them one time by 25 basis points, a 1/4%, and the stock market dropped like 5,000 points. And it was only when they put it back
that it went back up.
And then they said that they would continue lowering, that it went back up, and we achieved way all-time highs. So this whole thing of what we're seeing, the United States as we speak, well, it's already happened. We have officially entered Venezuela territory, where the grocery stores are cleaned out, where it says on all the signs you only get one per item. We officially have food rationing in the United States. In Venezuela, one of the things that they did was the government took over all the grocery stores, and then when you went to the grocery store, you had to show your ID, and I don't know if they'd write it down or scan it or how they would keep track of it, but it would be kept track of through your ID number when you were there and what you bought, so that if you walked out and then tried to go back in, they weren't going to sell anything to you that day. They're going to make you wait till the next day or the next week or whatever it is. And we've talked about Real ID, and that's what all of this stuff is about. It's about collapsing the United States into a third world country. We've already reached Venezuela territory with the food rationing, and now what's happening is, what's funny about all of this, we always hear about Trump, this great capitalist businessman, all of these things, yet all the solutions for these problems are communism. There's not a single free market solution being offered for any of this. Everything is communism. So we talked about this over the phone, and I have the actual thing in front of me. Trump signed an executive order, and it's referred to as the Defense Production Act. And the Defense Production Act, it allows the government to now go to privately owned business, and they can demand that they drop everything they're doing to serve the government. And so here's what it says here.
Now that's the last time that was invoked was during World War II.
Well, and what does Trump say? He calls it the war on the coronavirus, just like the war on terrorism. He's saying all the exact same things that George W. Bush was saying about terrorism, except replace terrorism with coronavirus, and it's all the exact same thing.
So we've gone from Goldstein to Bin Laden to the coronavirus, all in our generation.
So it says, on Wednesday, Trump signed an executive order invoking the law which would allow the administration to force American industry to manufacture medical supplies that are in short supply and sell them to the federal government. Now, the correct way to do that, you know, they're throwing around trillions and trillions of dollars, right? If Trump was a real capitalist, he would have said the federal government is accepting bids for masks and whatever gloves and whatever other equipment that they need in the hospitals. He could say we're openly accepting bids and we're going to pay double market. So private business, submit your bids, how much you can produce and what the price is that we're going to pay you, and then we're going to accept your contract and we'll start making it. But no, it's communism. They're saying they're going to go to your business and force you to produce for them. And if they say we're not going to pay, or we're going to pay 10 cents on the dollar, what are you going to do about it? You're going to pull a gun out and start shooting at them? Well, you know what happens if you do that. It then goes on to say the act allows the government to force private businesses to prioritize government contracts. The administration could also require U.S. manufacturers to make additional critical materials and goods and offer loans or guarantees to buy them. So there it is again. It's about giving loans. It's about enslaving us to debt. So this whole thing, what's happening right now in the United States, we have been collapsed into hard communism, where the government is taking over industry. They're forcing industry to work on their behalf. We have cleaned out grocery stores with rationing, one item per person. And while all this is going on, we're being ushered into a new financial system. Now, I don't know what that's going to look like. The United States in 1945 became, the US dollar became the world reserve currency. I looked this all up before I came over, and they say that world reserve currencies last on average for about 95 years. And there was two dates, actually. There was a 1920 date and a 1945 date. And they were saying that based off the 1920 date, that the U.S. has around 5 years left, you know, give or take. It could go. Well, what it was is it said that there was a 10-year give or take, and the article was old. And so they were projecting out to like 2023 is when it could all end. But clearly, and that there's a margin of error in there of 10 years. So it could actually end much sooner than their projected date. So we're going to see the ushering in of a whole new financial system. And it could look in many different ways. They can do the one world currency. They could actually keep the US dollar, but add a zero to everything. So if something costs $7, it'll cost $70. And the scariest thing about all of this, you know, this whole 1.5 trillion a day, $4 trillion in bailouts, they're not going to physically print the dollars. They're going to just add it to a screen. And so the day is going to come where every person in the country is going to want to get their dollars out of the bank, and they're going to be told, we don't have them, because for every dollar on a screen, or I should say, for every dollar that's physically printed, there's probably $10,000 on a screen, or $100,000. And that's what happened in Cyprus. They called it a bail-in, and they also called it a haircut, where if you had X dollars in your account, they just flat out told you, we're taking 20%, we're taking 25% or 80%. It was different depending on how much money you had. And they literally confiscated money out of the banks. Now, the negative interest rates is a confiscation, because when under normal times, let's say that the rates are 6%, you would get paid 6% every month or annually or compounded, whatever it is, on your savings and checking accounts. And so those people that retired, those old people that retire with $300,000 in the bank, that's why they used to say that they could just live off the interest for the rest of their lives, because the interest would end up being like $1,500 a month or whatever. Under negative interest rates, the bank is going to pay you negative interest.
They're going to charge you for a parking space.
They're going to charge you to keep your money in the banks. And the more money you have, the more money will be deducted out of your account every month. And when that happens, that's going to spur the run on the banks. And when everyone runs to the banks to go get their cash out, that's when they're going to realize that there's very few printed dollars out there, and it's all sitting on a screen, and you're not getting your money. And that's why this is selling double price on eBay right now, because people don't care what it costs. They'd rather have this physically in their pockets or in their hands than whatever it says on their online, bank account screen. So my recommendation to everyone, I'm not saying to go out and buy silver, but I'm saying to own things that have value, whatever those things are. It could be real estate, which I think is going to have a crash pretty soon, so I wouldn't go buy real estate right now, but just things that have a tangible value, rare collectibles, artwork, silver, gold, platinum, palladium. You can even, if you want, go buy a whole warehouse and stick it with food, because that'll be worth a lot at some point. But if all you're going to do is just have your money sitting in a bank account, it is in serious danger at this exact moment. And people have already been telling me, because I've already talked about it in one of my videos, people have already told me that they can't even get their money out of the bank, or that if they do try, they only get like $200. So I've already cleaned out my accounts. I already went to the ATM and cleaned my accounts out over the course of a couple of weeks. So,
and by the way, he's not keeping any of his wealth where he lives, so don't think about it.
Well, it's all over the place, but yeah, so that's what we're seeing right now. And and what I think is going to end up happening when the dust all settles is the United States is going to be like every other country in the world, just the way Russia became like every other country in the world after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So we are seeing, as we speak, the death of the American empire, and there's no better president to have in power right now than Donald T. Trump. I talked to my mom yesterday, big Trump supporter, and you know what she told me? She says, "Oh, I'm just so comfortable right now that at least Trump's the president with all this going on, because I trust whatever he does."
Oh my gosh.
And that exact.
She watches TV, doesn't she?
Well, she watches Fox News and Rush Limbaugh, and that's why Trump is in power to begin with. Now, I think it was 2014, 2015. We were told that there was a outbreak of Ebola in the United States, and there's a whole conversation we could have about that, because I didn't really believe that at the time either. But the Ebola outbreak, you literally bleed out of all of your orifices. You get a hemorrhagic fever where blood just comes out of all of your ears, your nose, your eyes, your where down there, comes out of every hole.
Well, that sounds like microwave sickness.
Well, it's a pretty awful thing to even talk about. But
another one of their hoaxes, I guess.
And the kill rate, 90%. So there was a disease going around a few years back with a kill rate of 90%, where the suffering was immeasurable, and none of this happened. There was no NBA shutting down, not canceling everything. None of this occurred. Point being that what's happening right now does not need to be happening. Trump, yeah, we know he's controlled and all of that, but he needs to grow a pair, and he should have just been like, no, we're not going to shut down our live to save a few 83-year-old people who probably will die in a year anyway. I mean, that's what we're doing right now. We're making the choice as a nation to destroy our country, to set our Constitution on fire in the name of saving some people who don't have much time left anyway under normal circumstances. I mean, give me a break. So under Obama with Ebola, they couldn't do any of this because everything he did, half the country, the half that owns most of the guns, always was against it. And so now what we're seeing is the following. The Democrats are the ones who did us in, and it's not left, right, any of that garbage. But what I mean by that is the people that don't like Trump, like the Democrats and all of that, anything he says or does, they're the opposite, right? So initially, Trump was saying, I don't think it's a big deal about it. He even called it a hoax at one point. The Democrats come out and they go, oh my God, he's not protecting us. So Trump said, okay, I'll protect you then. I'm going to protect you by signing the Defense Production Act. I'm going to protect you by taking over industry that's normally privatized. And so that's one half of the country. The other half of the country that has most of the guns, they go along with whatever he says anyway. People like my mom who says, oh, I'm so comfortable knowing that he's the one that's in control right now.
She watches a lot of TV, doesn't she?
Well, like I said, she watches Fox News and listens to Rush Limbaugh, and that's the propaganda mouthpiece of the Republican Party. So, you know, there's no better president right now than Donald Trump to usher in this engineer. That's the word I'm looking for, engineer. They're engineering this takedown of the economy. They're engineering the takedown of the country. And you know what? The whole country's on board right now, because even the Democrats who don't like him, they're agreeing with him right now because they want him to protect them, and he is protecting them. You know, by virtue of the fact that they're doing stay-at-home lockdown orders, you don't see him going on Twitter and saying I'm against that. He's all for that stuff. And the best part for Trump is, you know, my mom even said this. Oh, well, Trump's not going to do a national lockdown. Well, he doesn't have to, because the states are going to do it. The states will do it for him. So the states are going to bail him out on that issue. So this all happened in a flash. This was a flashpoint in our country. 9/11, in a matter of seconds, the country changed forever. And then on 3/11, just like 9/11, 3/11, 2020 was the day that America changed forever. 3/11 was the day that the NBA announced that they were going to cancel the rest of their season or suspend it. And then every other large entity followed suit. That resulted in the big stock market meltdown that happened the very next day. I don't remember what the point drop was. And then that resulted in the run on the stores. And the worse the markets get, the worse it's going to be for the banks. That's why the more the market drops, the bigger the liquidity injections get. And I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the people that I watch about the economy, when they were doing the 80 billion originally, they said you're going to see them go into the trillions. And I was just like, no, they're not. That won't even. How do you even pass that off?
Well,
so
yeah, they're taking us to negative interest rates. That's their plan. And Gary, tell people why the dollar's worth something. I mean, our treasuries are a safe haven for money around the world chasing a port in a storm, right? And so if we go to negative interest rates, what happens?
Well, two things happen under negative interest rates. The first thing that happens, and I know those of you that love to talk about the small hats and the usury and all of those things, you might say, well, that's a good thing. But in reality, it's not, because it's how our system works, at least the system that we're living under. So under negative interest rates, there will be zero incentive to loan money, because let's say I'm a bank and you're a business, and you wanted a $100 loan. I loan you $100 under negative interest rates. You'd only pay me $99 back. So there's no reason going forward under negative interest rates to have any kind of lending. And the result of, and remember, the whole world is on credit. Everyone's living off of credit. Businesses, our whole nation is living on credit. I mean, the whole U.S. Treasury bond market is credit. So the whole world revolves around credit. And if there's no more lending, we're going to have what's called a credit freeze. And under a credit freeze, that means your credit cards don't work anymore. Because here, I got one right here. When your bank issues you a credit card, this is fine. When your bank issues you a credit card, they are issuing you a loan. Like that credit card is a loan that you're able to use anytime you want. The banks will no longer honor credit card transactions because there'll be no reason for them to. Because every time that you make a credit card transaction, you'll actually be getting a discount on the item that you are purchasing. So that right there will just shut down the entire economy. The other thing that negative interest rate says that we already talked about is it forces you to pay the banks for them to hold your money. Now, if you're wondering about how this all makes sense, when you put your money in the bank, it is no longer your money. And I don't mean that in the terms of like with silver, like, you know, I hold this, therefore I own it. And when you put money to someone else, you no longer hold it. That's not what I'm referring to. When you give money to or you put your money in the bank legally treats it as a loan. So you are loaning money to the bank when you make a deposit into your account. So you are loaning them your money, which then allows them to then loan that money to other individuals and entities. If the bank fails, or the bank, what do you call it? If the bank fails, then they can't pay back your loans. Now, I've already had people call me out on it. They're like, "What about FDIC insurance?" Really? You think that under all of this going on with trillions and trillions, I mean, it's like video games now with the money.
Well, no, it's like the guy standing in front of the Fukushima reactor with a radiation suit, thinking he can plug the hole.
Yeah, I mean, think about it like this: if you have $1 million in the bank, which you shouldn't have, but if you have $1 million in the bank, and they go to a 0.25% negative interest rate, which is the next step, 25 more basis points, which would be a 0.25%, you'd be losing $250,000 every month, whatever, or I should say, 0.25%. So that'd be what, like probably $25,000 or something like that. Now, if you're losing that much money every month to negative interest rates, what makes you think that you're going to get bailed out with FDIC insurance? You're not. The FDIC insurance only works under normal economic, conditions.
It's a Ponzi scheme. There's not enough.
No, there's not. And that's why I keep making this point of when the Fed does trillion this and trillion that, they're not sending that to because or I should say, they're not physically printing that money themselves. They're just adding it to a screen. Just like if I transfer $1,000 to Joe through my bank to his bank, we're just moving digits around. We're not actually exchanging cash money. And so when that day comes, when everyone runs to get their cash out, they're not going to be able to get it. And it's been that way for years. I remember in like 2011, 2012, even back then, during the Great Recession, you couldn't even get more than 5,000 out at a time out of the bank because they didn't even have it. They literally didn't even have 5,000 cash, and they would tell you, "Well, we got to call other banks in the area and have them give it." I mean, well, what is this? Now, I know the question is going to be brought up, and I'm just going to address it before it gets brought up in comments or whatever. People are then going to say, "Well, if the dollar is worthless, or then what's the point of having your cash?" Well, the reason why you want to get your cash out is there's going to be an interim period. And I don't know if it's going to last weeks or months. It definitely won't last years, but it'll last weeks or months where the value of the dollar explodes. And you'll be able to get whatever you want as long as you have dollars in your pocket. So, for example, when the credit freeze happens, if you can't use a credit card anymore, then you have no choice but to use cash. That's why what you're witnessing right now, like, it's very easy to say, "Oh, the stock market's losing its value right now." The stock market is not losing its value. What's happening is the stock market is losing its value against the dollar, and the dollar is gaining in value against all other world currencies. Therefore, the price of oil is $25 a barrel. The price of gold in the spot markets has dropped from 1,700 down into the 1,400s. You're not seeing these items lose value. What you're seeing is they're losing value against the dollar. So in the short term, the dollar is actually gaining strength. It's not gaining strength at the grocery store because the grocery store is its own economy. But for a short period of time, it will be good to have dollars in your pocket. It won't last for very long, though. And what's going to happen eventually is then all those dollars are then going to, like, think of money as like a magnet. Um, uh, Items like gold, like real estate, anything you could think of that has an intrinsic value, it attracts money. And so, like a magnet, all that money is going to fly into these markets, whether it's the metals, whether it's real estate, whether it's cryptocurrency. It's going to go somewhere. So that's why I say that you should get your money out, because for a very short period of time, the money will be worth more than what it's typically worth. And you don't want to be this guy that's got his whole life savings sitting in a savings account somewhere, and then the bank says, well, we're going to give you a haircut and we're going to bail you in. Your $25,000 is now $500. Live with it, because that's what's going to end up happening. And all this stuff that I'm talking about, this is why they wanted our guns, because there will be major civil unrest in this country if this all comes to fruition. Now, to kind of go all the way back to the very beginning, and I never really got to the second point, I said, because the coronavirus, I see it playing out a couple of ways. The first way being is after a little while, they admit the virus is over. And I don't see that happening. If they admit the virus is over, the virus will reemerge in the next winter time. And we'll be doing all of this all over again, because the coronavirus is now forever, or until they do their next program, their next 20-year program. The other thing that I could see happening is, and I think this is more likely just because of the way this stuff all works, is coronavirus will never go away. It's just like terrorism. 18 years after 9/11, we're still living like,
Beirut.
Yeah, like it happened at any moment. And we're gonna live like that under coronavirus, where it's this nation of fear, and this whole thing with the lockdown orders. And I don't have any video. Do you mind if I plug a channel really quick? There's a channel. I know this guy. I actually did videos with him, just like how we're God 13. It's Warrior, the number 4, God 13. Warrior for God 13. Now, I mentioned him because he went out yesterday and he showed how everyone's out still. Everyone's driving around. I was out yesterday. All the stores were open. So the point I'm making is this whole Gavin Newsom stay-at-home order, which they admitted would not be enforced, it's a test. And we'll see more of that in the future. And that's why I say this whole nation of fear is because every time there's a bank robbery, stay at home. Every time there's a shooting and there's a gunman on the loose, everyone stay at home. And the reason why they're going to do that, and it's going to work for them, is because we now have at least 10 years of children who have come up through the school system where they have lockdown drills every week or every month or however often. When I was in school, we never once had a lockdown drill.
Never had that.
Ever.
No.
Ever. There was never a lockdown drill. I know during my dad's time, they used to do the nuclear bomb drills.
The duck and cover.
Duck and cover, where you go into the desk because a nuclear bomb just got dropped, right? Same exact program. So we have a generation coming up who are either adults now or are becoming adults, where when they hear lockdown, shelter in place, stay at home,
it becomes reflexive behavior.
They're going to say, well, this is what we had in school, so what's the big deal? So the scenario I'm laying out is the virus will never end. They're going to say that it continues on forever. And if that ends up being the case, then the America we had a few weeks ago, we will never, ever see again. Just the way how the pre-9/11 America has never been returned to us. And so 3/11, what was the flashpoint, where in just 1 second, that one announcement from the NBA changed everything, completely changed everything. And that's why you put I think you should be watching TV, Joe, because they're telling us everything that's going to happen. They're saying new normal, new way of life, new way of doing things. Things are going to change. The life that you knew is no longer in existence. I mean, this is a full-on takeover that we have just witnessed, and it happened right under our noses, and it's already over. It's already happened. Like, it's not like it's happening. It's already happened. And, you know, I've told people in my videos for years that, you know, there's going to be a day where you're on your own. And what I mean by that is like a lockdown order where you're in your house with your loved ones. And I hope you got good neighbors. I hope you have people that you know that are allies that live near you. But there's going to be a day where you're on your own. Donald Trump's not going to save you. The police aren't going to save you. And when that day comes, there are not going to be any rules anymore. It'll just be, you know, it'll literally be survival of the fittest. And I thought we were at that point just a few days ago when Newsom originally made that order about staying at home. Because my first thought was, well, how are they going to enforce it? They're going to put troops on the street? It's the only way you can enforce that, which of course there wasn't. But, you know, that's the one positive I've seen out of all of this. And that's from that Warrior for God 13 video, as well as my own experience just being out yesterday. Everyone's still out. So that is an act of defiance that people are not just sitting at home. Yeah, a lot of people are. There was no traffic when I drove over here. I mean, the freeways are pretty clear, but there are still people out there. So if you want to know how we fight this, one thing that I saw, and I haven't really seen it happen yet, in one of Trump's press conferences, some guy that was up there with them, he said we're going to have safe stores and did not specify what that meant. But in my opinion, a safe store is a store where they put that little thing on your forehead to check your temperature. And eventually they're going to make us all submit to that to walk into stores. Now, here's the situation with that. Do not submit to the temperature thing, because if you do, well, number one, if your temperature is 99.4, they go, oh, he has a fever. They could drag you off right there, even though you're not even sick. Or, you know, they could find a way to say you have coronavirus and drag you off. It was a Thanksgiving holiday weekend some years back where they did the opt-outs for the TSA, where everyone around the country refused to go through TSA, and it screwed the whole system up. And they had to keep doing it, but they did it. Of course, they went back to normal. People went back in line like the sheeple they are, and they kept doing TSA. But if there's a day where they're trying to scan your forehead, you know, to see your temperature to go into a grocery store, we need everyone to resist and to have defiance and to say, I'm not submitting to that. That's the only way we could ever get back to where we were, or to have any kind of normalcy, is we have to be in defiance of the government. If you're a business, you know, stay open. Like seriously, I was driving yesterday. AutoZone was open. That's not considered an essential services or whatever, but they were open. So if you have what's considered a non-essential business, you should just open your doors anyway. What are they going to do? Are they going to arrest you for having your business open? And now I know most people aren't going to be like me and take the arrest, but if you were to get arrested, I mean, think of all the legal implications of all of that, where, you know, that is as unconstitutional as you can get. The government has no right to tell you that you can't go somewhere. They have no right to stop you in your tracks from traveling somewhere. They have no right to tell you that you're not allowed to make an income or to open your business. So defy them. Open your business. Do not submit to the grocery store temperature scan if that ever... Oh my God, why is he... Don't submit to the temperature scan at the grocery store. You know, when they tell you to stay home, go out. When they tell you to social distance, get as close as you can to the person. I just had someone right now text me. This is what they said. They were at a grocery store called Aldi. This was actually a few hours ago. But they said we were all scolded at Aldi that we need a social distance. No, bull.
Here, I need to get up real quick.
Yeah.
Slide over. I'm gonna let you continue with the audience here. I gotta do something real quick here. Excuse me, ladies. Stay put. Gary's got this. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead and take it. What's that?
All right. So for those of you who tuned in, might have tuned in late. My name is Gary Galino, and I have a YouTube channel called Grindall61. That's GRINDALL61. We're also recommending another YouTube channel, Warrior for God 13. That's warrior, the number 4, God 13. And he's a friend of mine. We've done videos together in the past, and he just reemerged recently as a result of all of this. And his videos are very powerful. So please check those out. But to go back to what I was saying, you know, if we just go along and do whatever the government says, then they're going to continue pushing forward. So, for example, let's just say they did, like Gavin Newsom does the whole. Now, I don't want to use the word lockdown because that's not what it was. It was specifically referred to as a stay-at-home order. Now, if everybody would have stayed home and everybody would have listened, they could have then gone out a week later and said, "Oh, well, now just letting you know, we're deputizing all police to stop you, card you, pull you over if you're out." You know, because when they try to do a power grab and you go along with it, they're going to then do the next power grab. And that's what happened after 9/11. 9/11 was one power grab after another, after another, after another, after another. It never stopped with 9/11. And that's what they're doing here. They're trying to see what they can get away with. And I'll give you an example of that. So Gavin Newsom's reasoning for why we had to do the stay-at-home order was he said that, oh, I have new information about coronavirus that's very pertinent, and you know, we have to take drastic actions. And the pertinent information was the following, and we saw it in the news. They told us that there would be 25 million coronavirus infections in California alone. 25 million. Think of how stupid that number sounds. Around the entire world. Now, maybe it might be different now. I haven't checked in a couple of days. But as of a couple of days ago, in the entire world, there were less than 200,000 coronavirus infections that were reported. Under 200,000 for the entire world. And then California comes out and says, in just one state alone, there will be 25 million infections. They are literally making things up right now. And they want to see if you'll believe it. And then if you do believe it, they're then going to pass legislation based on that. Let me give you another example. I got an IM on Facebook yesterday, and it was this little screenshot. And the screenshot said, it has been discovered that coronavirus is sitting on the gas pumps, and numerous people have gotten sick as a result of filling up, putting gas in their cars. I wanted to pull my hair out and go, bullshit. Nobody went around the entire state, checked all the gas stations, or I should say, nobody went around the entire country, checking all the gas pumps, swabbing to see if there's coronavirus on the pumps. Nobody did that. Yet they're telling us that it is. They're making things up. I had another person tell me a couple of days ago, they said that on the TV, it said that coronavirus is 3 times more potent than the flu. Says who? Where do you get that measurement from? What is the unit of measurement for potency of a disease or a virus or an illness, right? Like, and by unit of measurement, I mean like pounds, ounces. You know, those are units of measurement. What is the unit of measurement for an illness, right? Like it would be a number, like an actual what's the word? Not monetary, but it'd be like an actual it'd be an actual number. Like it'd be the virus is this many units of measurement of you know, of sickness, of suffering, of pain. There is no such thing. There's no units of measurement for these viruses. And since that's the case, how can you then come out and say with a straight face that one is 3 times 300% more dangerous or potent than another? They're making this stuff up. Now, I know Joe says that there's no virus at all, that it doesn't exist. I don't know about that. I'm kind of on the fence about that. I think there probably is something out there that's getting people sick. That wouldn't surprise me, because you know, we've always said for years that that's something they'll release the bioweapon, which that's what this is. This is a bioweapon. But the point that I'm making is this is why for the last few years they've been obsessing over the measles. Nobody dies from the measles. Everybody survives that gets the measles, but they act like, oh my God, if you don't get the MMR vaccine, you're gonna get measles and you're gonna die or whatever they say. This is the measles. This is all this is. This is all fear mongering, and so the number probably has changed, but the numbers are being updated every day, obviously. But as of right now, in terms of in the United States, when it comes to infections versus fatalities, I think the number I heard earlier today was there was like 24,000 infections and like 360 deaths. So 360 versus 24,000. It was something like that. Those are kind of ballpark numbers. And when I did the math a couple of days ago, the kill rate in the United States of the coronavirus was 1.3%. 1.3. So that means you have a 98.7% possibility of surviving if you catch the virus. So there's no reason to shut down the country, shut down the economy, to radically change our lives. But that's what they are doing with this. And that's why my theory is that coronavirus is the next 9/11. And I'll just kind of refresh those who came in a little late. What I am saying is we had 9/11 from 2001 to 2020, basically a 20-year program. And because of 9/11, we had to be TSA'd at the airports. They had to spy on our phone calls, spy on our emails, Patriot Act, Department of Homeland Security, all that stuff. War on terrorism, right? That program is over. You're not going to hear about war on terrorism anymore. You're not going to hear about terrorists anymore. Now, if you watch Trump on television, he says it's the invisible enemy that you can't see, just like terrorism. Terrorism was the faceless, stateless enemy that you did not know who they were, where they were. It could be anyone at any time. And so they're now, and then when we go to TSA, TSA is now for coronavirus. They now want to spy on our GPS location through our cell phones because of coronavirus. It's all the exact same thing. 9/11, spy on phones, spy on emails, spy on communications, TSA. Coronavirus, spy on phones, spy on GPS, TSA. It's the exact same program with a new boogeyman. And just like terrorism, the coronavirus can kill you. It's the whole fear of all of this, that, oh, I could die. You know, that's why at different times people have said, I don't know if I want to go out to large gatherings. I could die because of a terrorist attack. Now people are going to say, I don't want to go out to large gatherings because I could die of coronavirus. They have rebranded 9/11 into coronavirus. This is the new program to take your rights. And like I went through earlier for about 20 minutes, this whole program, it is about taking your rights, but it's the mask that is being used to bring down the economy and to have you believe that the people who are responsible for bringing down the economy had nothing to do with it. I don't know where Joe went. It's raining right now, and he's been gone for a few minutes, but so I'm going to close this out because it's already been going for an hour and 20 minutes. But lastly, for those of you, my name is Gary Galeno. The YouTube channel is Grindall61, Grindall61. And also check out my friend. His name's also Joe, Joe Mendez. His channel is Warrior for God 13. That's Warrior, the number 4, God, and 13. Joe, are you out there? Where's he at? Did he leave?
What are you looking for?
Looking for Joe.
Gabriano?
Yeah.
No, he's in the house.
Oh, all right. Well, anyway, so I'm going to sign out now because I don't know where Joe's at. And I'm going to just, I think I've said enough. And this video has been long enough. So take care. God bless. Get right with God. And get your money out of the banks because you're going to regret it if you don't. So take care, everybody.